Welcome, survivors, seekers, and thrivers. I'm your host, Shari Leigh Roberts, psychic medium, energy healer, and living proof that you can transform your pain into power. Each episode, we dive into trauma healing, developing your intuitive gifts, and reclaiming your life. Get ready for real stories, deep wisdom, and a little laughter along the way.
Welcome back. I have an incredible guest today. She is not my typical guest talking about trauma per se. But I really think what we will talk about does involve underlying, or not even underlying, but her real fake trauma. I have the beautiful and intelligent Briana Gervat with me. It is a pleasure having you. Now, just a little bit about her being forward way dive in. Briana Gervat with the undergraduate and her bigger passion appears to be world his center right and certainly after COVID in 2022, Briana took off to Rwanda to study and learn more about that 1990 forward genocide between the lifelong between the Hutu and the Tutsi. Let's begin there. Welcome.
Thank you, Shari. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. And I feel as if, if we're talking about trauma and healing, the Rwandan genocide is, a place to begin because it was so traumatic and it was so devastating. And to have gone there and to see the impact of the genocide and to be there 20 years after and to see what they have continued to do has really really changed the way I saw the world and helped me to understand I don't know about forgiveness necessarily, but that we are barbaric in so many ways, but then there's so much beauty.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's that balance between the two of how can a country, and so many countries experience that, how can a country become that, but then also be as beautiful as it is with so much light.
Yeah. Why don't you give her background and those two have groups. They give a bring people into what led up to the genocide and how those deaths to genocide can be found globally now. I do know quite a bit about the genocide. I have been written a Korean play based on a book about the genocide. I met the author. He is Dory resonated with me as to things they were happening all over, including here in the US. For people who are not aware of what led up to it, I would love for you to talk about that.
So one, I think that is incredible that you wrote a screenplay. I think that that is,
Yeah.
I'm so impressed by that.
Oh my, that thing.
No, no,
You
thank
know,
you. It's so interesting because you hear people hear about the genocide and they hear and they maybe watch Hotel Rwanda, but for someone to learn about it and then to take a story and make it into another story to try to talk about it is such a beautiful thing, and I love that we have that connection. I think that that is I think that is
yeah.
So to go back to your question, you can go back to before the Europeans arrived. You had the Hutus, which were the farmers, and the Tutsis, which were the cattle herders. And so the Tutsis came from the northeast of Africa, and then they made their way to the lands of the tiny heart of Africa, which is what they call it. It's the land
Yeah.
next to Congo, the richer places that have resources and nicer weather and more farmable land. So you had the farmers, then you had the cattle herders, and the farmers were more poor because they were attached to the land, and the cattle farmers can travel. So the people that traveled were the Tutsis, and you had the Hutus that stayed there. And there was always going to be a separation between the two. But then when the Belgians came and they colonized the Congo and the reaching areas, they further separated them by measuring their length of their nose and their height and the shape of their heads and all that. It's not phrenology, but it just they wanted to make it a distinguished difference between the two tribes, even though they were both living in Rwanda. And so they gave a lot of more power, I think, to the Hutus than the Tutsis, or the Tutsis had more power. One of the groups, it went back and forth. So after that, after the Rwandans won their independence in 1953, 1954, there was a lot of upheaval between the two groups, and there was violence, and there was a lot of war. So you had Hutus that stayed in Rwanda, you had Tutsis that went to Burundi or the Congo or any of those surrounding areas. And so there was always just constant violence or constant tension between the two. And that came after and then afterwards throughout the years it happened, and then it just kept on building and kept on building and kept on building. And then in 1993, in October 1993 in Burundi, they had 10,000 Tutsis were killed, and nobody listened to the warning signs. And then in the early months of 1994, the general that was in Rwanda, Romeo Dallaire, wrote a fax or a letter to the UN and said they're preparing for genocide. The Hutus are preparing for genocide, and it went unnoticed. Not that it went unnoticed, but it went nobody listened to his warnings, and he saw the weapons coming in from China, and it was like, no, it's not gonna happen. There's or also the whole blase, who cares? It's some Central African nation that nobody can point out to on a map, which makes it worse. So the tensions were rising, more and more violence. And then on April 6th, 1994, the Hutus shot the plane that was carrying the president of not only Rwanda, but I also believe Burundi, out of the sky. So they assassinated him. And then in the hours afterwards, they put up barricades and they started killing everyone. And within the first week, 100,000 people were killed. And then when they finished in Kigali, they just went from town to town to town. And they didn't stop for 100 days. And in the end, and they sent the bodies down the river, and people watched it, or we didn't watch it because as it was happening, that was when what's his name, when OJ Simpson was killing his wife. So it was like, okay, there's a genocide happening in Rwanda, and our president at the time in America, Bill Clinton, would not define it as a genocide because he had trouble defining words for some reason, and he wouldn't do anything to stop it. They wouldn't send anyone. The UN would not send anyone.
No.
And how do they say never again? How do they say never again when you have children ripped from their mothers and getting killed in the most horrific ways you could possibly imagine? And then after the violence subsided, there were still tremors afterwards. But then because they couldn't go anywhere, because the Hutus couldn't go anywhere and the Tutsis couldn't go anywhere, they had to live with one another and face their attackers and the people that took their families away. And then they worked on a way of reconciliation. And it sounds so beautiful when you say it like that it was reconciliation,
But
and really, there's people that will sit there and be like, okay, well, Paul Kagame is a dictator that's been in power since 1994, and his response to the genocide was just the same as what the Hutus were doing.
Yeah.
But they never they never really got in trouble for their war crimes. It just like it happens
No.
everywhere. And to go back to what you were saying, I just think that in 1948, when the UN was founded and they said never again, what do they mean by that? Because it keeps on happening. It
Yeah.
happened in Rwanda, it happened in Bosnia, it's happening in
Oh.
Palestine.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
hap it's happening worldwide. It happened
Yeah.
in Cambodia. And so when we say never again, what do we mean?
And after they polite. I was like, pay about where else then side had or was and is occurring then doing deep dives into the common lay it up to every one of one of those that are what you point out about the Belgians. They created a greater divide between the Hutus and the Tutsis. There are a total of 7 deaths. They are leading to genocide. Forward make a boldly that it continues to happen. Those people become more they turn off their career thinking and follow and feel the way they are told to proceed or feel about a particular ethnic group riots. Do you find that to be true?
Very, very, very much so. I think that that is the answer to all why war is prolonged or why war is began and why genocides continue to happen because you dehumanize someone.
Yeah.
And and exactly what you just said, people believe what they're told and they blindly follow and they think, okay, well, this is the story that I'm told. And even when you say, hey, but what about this? But
Yeah.
what about what do you think about this? And like you said, they turn off their critical thinking, or maybe they don't have the capacity to think critically about stuff.
True. Yeah.
And I think that, for people maybe like us that are more empaths who will feel that and say, no, I don't think this is right, then I think that people that you can't, there's only so much you can say before you're blue in the face.
Yeah.
Going back to what
Yeah.
you said, the Belgians created a greater divide. And I was in DC in the fall, Washington DC, this past fall. And it's so interesting because I walked the Western Front of World War One, and the Belgians screamed bloody murder about how horrific the Germans were. And then I had a cab driver from Rwanda, and it didn't occur to me, even though I studied the Rwandan genocide, and even though I walked the Western Front, that I was like, those sons of bitches. They are, how cruel of them to cry wolf, not even wolf, but just be so upset with the Germans and say, oh, the Boche, oh, the Boche. And then they turn around and have done the same thing.
Yeah.
I think that going back to shutting off your critical thinking, it's also hypocrisy.
Mm-hmm.
You can't say never again and then,
Yeah.
do it. You can't do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what happens. You have all
Yeah.
these people that sit there and say, oh, never again, and they don't have that self-awareness or that reflection to say, wait, hold on, do I have that in me to do that? Do I, how much would it take for me to respond in a violent way?
Mm-hmm.
I think that violence
Yeah.
is easiest response.
Yes.
Sitting and seeing people is a lot more difficult. And what is that saying? I'm sorry, the difficult will do right now, the impossible will take a while.
Yeah. Yes. But what a time lately can fire what led you to Rwanda and did allow for your travels. Did allow your travels lead you to Washington D.C.
Yeah, so what led me to Rwanda, I think I was in graduate school, and I was writing my thesis, my master's thesis. And this was before social media. So
Yeah.
photographs still carried more weight than
Yeah.
they do now.
Yeah.
We are so
Yeah.
inundated. So I would sit there and be stunned into silence by these photographs of war. And I'm not talking about the Spanish Civil War, or even the images. I mean, we grew up looking at the images of the Holocaust and
Yeah.
Vietnam, and the My Lao massacre, like
Yeah.
My Lai massacre. Like you
Yeah.
remember those images, and now people just scroll. They call it doom scrolling, but what are they seeing? They're not even seeing.
Yeah. No.
So I was thinking about what I wanted to do, and I loved photography. I wasn't a photographer yet, but I loved photography. I would spend so much time outside studying light and being entranced by buildings. But when I looked at these images, and they were so heartbreaking.
Oh, her.
Yeah.
Just
Very much so. And so I thought, there's that old adage for photographers that one image can change the world.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked at the images, I would look at all these images by what is his first name? this man named Gilles. Gilles. No, I forget his, but he was a beautiful photographer. And then I came across all these other images because after the genocide ended, journalists would come in and they took these pictures, and it was just like even thinking about what they saw
Yeah.
was, and I felt so called to write about it because it was so, it broke every chamber of my heart to see these images. And I thought, if I could just write something about it, if I could explore this and speak about it, maybe we can understand it more.
Nice.
And so I did that, and then that's what I did. I went to Rwanda and I spent time there. And talking about trauma, I got to teach yoga to both Hutus and Tutsis that were living together, and they were the part of the Rwandan cycling team. So we would get together and we would just at night, and I would teach a yoga class before we had dinner. And it was part of the healing process of all these people, and they had, they had lost their family members,
Yeah.
or their fathers had participated in it, or they were orphans, and they all were there. And even the people that worked there, they were of the age where were they all had experienced the genocide in one way or another. So it was just this profound experience of doing yoga as healing, as a way to reconcile within yourself and within your peers
Yeah.
that life is a tragedy
Yeah.
and that we still have to move through it.
Yeah. Yeah. Bây giờ
Afterwards, so after Rwanda, I went on pilgrimage.
I want to talk about that too. So we go into that now, and then talk about Washington.
Sure.
Oh,
Sure. So, okay. Going back, so after I finished after I went to Rwanda and stuff, this was at we had been at war in Iraq and in Afghanistan for years, and then we started bombing Syria, and it was a proxy war. We were bombing Syria because we really wanted to fight Russia, but then we really wanted to, it was really confusing as to why that was all happening, and I was very confused. So I would have these dreams, and I didn't know, but I have guides. Maybe they're guardian angels, or they're guides, or they're these, and they were always these men that would just surround me and just say, like, push me in a direction and just say, no, you need to do this. And I just, like, you know what? I wasn't as, like, I was very spiritual, but not in the way that I am now. It took me a long time to recognize, but I said, it was like, oh, Spirit's telling me to do this. Like, Spirit's telling me, calling me to go on this journey. And so I went to India, and then I went to the Middle East, and I couldn't go to Syria because I don't know if I didn't have the credentials as a journalist, and I didn't have, the clearance to go. So the closest I can get to it was volunteering in Beirut in a Syrian refugee camp.
Oh, wow.
So to teach English, and in that Syrian refugee camp, or I was in an area that was, for old Palestinian refugees that fled Palestine during the Nakba.
And was that
The Nakba, or when I went to Lebanon?
Both.
Okay, so the Nakba is in 1948. So they'll talk about the War of Independence that,
Okay.
that the Israelis came and then they fought and they got their independence and then but there, then they have the whole there's another side of the story where people were forced to leave their homes and they still keep their keys with them. And so you had hundreds of thousands of Palestinians that were left without homes to make room for people that didn't have homes from Europe.
Yeah.
So they came to Lebanon, they went to Jordan, maybe some came to America. So they have been refugees ever since. They have been refugees out of their own heartland for 80 years.
Terrible.
And so, so I went to Lebanon in 2017, in 2017, and I stayed there for a month, and everybody was like, "Why are you going to Lebanon? Don't you feel do you feel safe?" And I said, "I feel less safe staying here and doing nothing."
Yeah.
And then what's so strange though is that now with everything that is happening in the world, I find myself doing nothing because you also question, well, what can I do? You can have this
Yeah.
beautiful gift of writing, but what can you do to stop humans from being unhuman?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. I my they are too, but I agree. There are times we need to wait to be guided. Our bigger teams will guide us. So to be where you are in the moment, present, taking it in is not doing nothing. I look at it as the time of preparation. We're getting info to prepare us for where and what we'll do next. I cannot wait to hear what you are called to do and where. For me, I am being called to Ireland, and I've never been. You?
Yes, no, I've been there. I like it. I haven't been back in many, many years, but why are you called to Ireland? Tell me.
I don't know. Other than there is, I think, to be learned it then more and advanced spiritual learning that I am to take part in. There is also a personer hela lägen alla män till beande det där kallar lärare till hägers när kan bara det är lärare per av det är journey and adventure not being sad in what I believe is going to happen, but being present and allow it to pray then and act upon that.
I love that. I hope that you find what you keep going. You were saying.
Well, I was going to what find your journey up the western front. If that is how that followed did for you. And how about you that trip tell us when and where and what came out of it.
Like you, I was called. I was called in the middle of the night. It was a calling, but it wasn't. It was literally on social media. I saw something for the front way, but it was still a calling. It was. I didn't even question it. It was just. By then, I had noticed. I had recognized it. But it's so interesting you ask this because I was just in France last week. And I returned to the Western Front, and I walked a part of it while I was there. And as I walked, I was like, wow, I must have been in a place that I would not want to return to. Because I had gone, I was in such not a dark place, but I was in a place of growth and healing, but in grief and pain. And I think that my walking the Western Front at the time that I did, in the moments that I did, was the spirit saying, here is pain. Your pain, the pain of the world. Walk together with it and see what you can make of it.
Oh, wow.
And so being back there and having that experience and walking and it being different because the air smelled different. The land looked different. It was spring as opposed to the beginning of the fall. It was a beginning rather than an end. And when I was there, the first time I was there was a funeral. And then when I was there this weekend, there were so many weddings. And they would say, as soon as and I got into the city and they were beeping the horns the whole time. And it didn't even, Shari, I didn't need anyone to tell me what was happening. I knew there were weddings. And I just thought, that's life.
Yeah. Okay. What year did you go? And tell us where your journey began and where you ended.
So I walked 500 miles across the Western Front of the Great War, of World War One. And I say this often in my book, that we call it World War One because there was a second war. So I walked 500 miles and I began in the mountains of the Vosges, which is it's in the where Switzerland comes out and France sits on top of it here. So it's almost like the Appalachian Mountains.
Yeah.
And I walked up along the east side of France and I hugged the east side of France, the border of Germany, and then went up into Belgium. And as I walked, I passed by all of the trenches and the battlefields and the sites that they fought along for 4 years. And I would go every day and walk about 15 miles. And some days I would camp. And some days I would stay at hotels. And I eventually found my way to the North Sea in Belgium. And, you know, you talking about healing and trauma, I got there and it should have been a beautiful, happy moment. And I was sad because of the war and the wars that continue and the genocide that continue. And my mom and I speak about this all the time. We learned nothing.
Yeah.
And I was sad because I thought I learned so much, but you know, you are on a healing journey. You never stop learning, and and I feel like you take 2 steps forward, you take 2 steps back. I'm like, no, you take 2 steps forward, and then you like go so far back.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yes.
Yes.
Something just came to me while you were speaking, and the answer to change may be as simple as having conversations like this, but also editing being in a way that initiates change for example. You go going on these journeys, being open minded, learning, sharing what you learned, and allowing people to apply that to their own actions, thoughts, and behaviors, because we know we can talk all day long. We can try our hardest to convince other people that they are way word or just not seeing things the way they're meant to be. Yeah, they are just like, okay, you were talking like you so many of us who have done research. They're physically in books and online talking with people we are far more open and able to see from a bigger, clearer perspective way more powerful leading by example than trying to convince people that they are wrong or whatever. Do you do that Western front journey alone?
I did. I did do the Western Front journey alone. But to go back to what you were saying, I think it's so interesting because, in order for us, we might do research and read books and have a bigger picture of the way the world is or what we think it is.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I have so many flaws and I don't always take the right course of action. And
Yeah.
so I am not always my greater self. So I don't think that it's fair to expect people to be, I think that in an ideal world, it is a beautiful thing that we all can be good and light and beautiful and kind.
Yeah,
But we are not like that to ourselves. How do we expect to do that? And when I say ourselves, we are not kind to ourselves many days. So how
Sure.
do we expect to find that kindness and apply it to other people if we are not doing that here? So
Yeah,
I think I
correct.
did, yeah. So doing the Western journey by myself, I just, like I said, after being there this weekend and walking, I was like, wow, I don't know if walking the Western Front was the most unkind thing I've done to myself or
Yeah,
kind thing, because
yeah,
it was it was a trudge. It was, but I needed, like we talked about before, I was called to do it. There was something in me or spirit came to me and there was no questioning it. It was, I did it and I don't have any regrets. Je ne regrette rien.
yeah. Well, there, the land of your word empathic, abilities, and what you felt and picked up from what had gone down and what you at that time were dealing with, trying to heal from.
I think that, a lot of that like, I'm at an impasse right now because I think that, and I've always felt this way, is like, okay, I have my own personal trauma, my own grief. And so, do you compare it? Do you compare it to what other people that went through? And I think that being there and knowing that these men lived in the trenches, they were killed in the trenches, and they saw terrible things. It was interesting because when I was there this weekend, it was the wind would blow through the trees, but but I don't know when if you were outside sometimes, but when I'm outside, sometimes you see the wind blow through some trees, but not all of the trees. So it's
Yeah.
not they're all not together, and it's like okay, like I hear
Yeah.
you, I see you, and so it was more of
Yeah.
a like it was almost like a welcoming back when I
Yeah.
was there. But when I was first there, it was more cautious. It was more, I would walk through and I would touch the headstones, try not to do too much because I wasn't there to intrude, but
Yeah.
it was more of a, oh man, the things that were asked of these men, the things that
Yeah.
were asked of the people that lived there, the things that they must have heard. It was always, even when I was walking, it was so strange because I was like, there was so much silence. And yet, when there was the war, there would have been no silence. There would have been
Yeah.
maybe a fleeting moment of silence, but there was no silence. There was not the silence that I experienced. And it was, that to me was incredibly peaceful and it made me feel more grounded was to have the quiet. And, I kept on thinking all quiet on the Western Front because it was quiet.
But yeah, definitely. Do you mind sharing what trauma in your life you were experiencing at that time? If not, that is okay.
No, it's okay. I've been really processing it even more since I was there last week.
Uh,
Um, when I was 9, I lost my best friend to cancer. And
oh
then
my
2 months
God.
later, yeah, it had a profound impact on my entire life. And then
I,
my aunt died 2 months later. And it was grief upon grief.
yeah.
And then
Uh,
I just spent the rest of my life in this anger of not being able to process what that grief really was and how sad it really was and how I never allowed myself to actually like I was sad and I knew I was sad and I knew I missed my best friend and I knew I missed my aunt, but I never really sat with the sadness. I just let it transition and move into anger and aggression. And so I spent almost 30 years of my, not even, no more than that, like 33 years of my life. And until actually like last year and even now, trying to move through that grief instead of actually just not accepting it, but um, acknowledging how it has impacted every single aspect of my life.
Death, particularly, that has a profound impact, and particularly if the people around you didn't help you progress and heal. I am what a terrible for me, growing up, death was a terrifying Then my grandmother died when I was 5.
Oh, you were 5.
I saw her in my home until her funeral. Didn't understand why I saw her, what death was. The girl, that my mother, my dad, everybody around me was so profound that it almost became crippling. So, death after that was just a horrible experience. My mother didn't have the wherewithal to explain what death was or is.
Yeah.
Dad, you have a similar experience when you were in and died.
No, because I come from a big Italian family.
Oh,
So we had
okay.
many, many deaths always, but it was just, these were big deaths. These were deaths
Yeah,
that, of cancer. These were profound deaths. Like you said with your
yeah,
grandmother, it's when the people closest to die, it is the most difficult because you know, you, who can explain death? You can sit there and say it's a part of life, that it is something that happens, that we are all going to die, but how do you explain to a 9-year-old that
yeah,
her best friend is no longer there? How do you explain to my cousins that their mother is no longer there, And
yeah.
then we had a grief counselor in elementary school who would meet with us, and then she got killed in a DWI accident like a few months later.
No,
Yeah. So
good
it was just this, yeah, Sherry,
Lord.
it was,
Oh my God.
yeah, and it was just
I
yeah.
can totally get now why you were in that place that you were. What part did your healing journey?
I think that it was a mixture of so many things. I think that it was I couldn't live the way I was living anymore. I couldn't feel the way I was, and I still feel the same way. Like there's still parts of me that are quick to anger and everything, and need to run away but I think it was a slow process. It was one of those. It was, when I first moved down to Georgia, I was like, oh, it's a softening that is taking place. But I think that comes with age as well. But I also think with the healing journey is that it's not linear, and that
Yeah,
you begin it, and then you sometimes you just want to throw your hands up and say, I can't do this, I don't want to do this. So it's this come and go. It's not this consistent, like, there are people out there, these, spiritual gurus or people that proclaim themselves, and they're like, no, stay on the path. And it's like, that's not realistic. There are some days that you're
No.
like, F it. I don't want to,
Yeah.
I'm off the path. This path has beaten me. I'm off the beaten path.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
path has beaten me. I just don't, I'm tired. I don't want to breathe the right way. I don't want to move the right way. I don't want to think the right way. I just want to just not.
Yeah. Yeah. Man. Take a look. Now, they are terrible. So important to those experience saying that or well, I mean, if you're going to embark on a healing journey, that time will come where you're done no more. You are feel your wills and but really strong people get up and keep on going forward. Now, death with my understanding of or having a better understanding of the other side of our souls. My belief now is there is no death the way I was brought up to believe. I have always believed in God and that our souls cross over and go to heaven.
Right.
I that is true in a lot of cases. The point, the bigger point I want to ask you about is once I began realizing when someone dies or passes away, the only thing happening here is that their soul their physical body they cross over to what they're meant to do. But we can almost still connect with them.
Right.
With a matter of learning how to use your innate abilities. Your currently understanding or feeling about death, or where are you at this point?
I think that I'm more in a gratitude point than a need to connect with the spirits of the dead. I think that in a way, I'm so grateful that those I've been able to share the moments I have with these people that have had an impact on my life, but also if they were called to someplace else or anything, I let them be in more ways. I mean, I talk to my best friend and I just say, I'll sit there and be like, "Are you ready, Melissa?" Like her name was Melissa. And I would talk to her and say, "Okay, you're here with me," but at the end of the day, I think that you know, uh there are people that will curse the dead and be like, "Oh, I can't believe you left me," or
Yeah,
and I just one of those, thank you for living your life. Thank you for being present and wherever you are,
yeah,
I
yeah,
think that like, I don't know. I don't know if we get reincarnated or that, you get, that we have those soul contracts, those karmic connections, those soul ties where, if I meet you in this lifetime, I met you in all other lifetimes and I'll meet you in all the more lifetimes. It's I like to think that we live in one another's orbit in so many
yeah,
ways.
yeah,
And so, whether they're present now or a new baby is born and that's part of them, I think that it's recognition and just,
yeah,
or like I said before, looking at the trees, seeing the wind blow through them and be like, okay, there you are.
yeah. Yeah, so like, and we are reincarnated our souls continue on learning what they are or it is meant to learn and experience. And again, nothing of that goes on over in that realm is linear either. Nothing's happening linearly.
No, you're right. You're right. It's true. There's nothing.
Yeah,
It's this, like we talked about, like it's the
yeah,
orbit is, it's that, I learned about the word the other day, but the infinity, and there's that idea in geometric
yeah,
and sacred geometry, and that idea that it's just infinite. We are,
yeah,
in our souls, we are infinite. The universe is infinite. All of these
yeah,
things are, it's infinity, and it just,
yeah,
it just, and then you have that idea of time being infinite and those, that time is happening simultaneously. Like, there's just so much involved, and you
I
know
know.
like, what do you can believe in everything, or you can just be like, you know it is what it is.
Yeah, yeah, what words wisdom would you like to impart about your journey or anything else to people listening to this?
I think it's something that I'm starting to learn now, is that we have to learn how to breathe, and that means breathing in life, breathing in those experiences, breathing in our emotions, and then exhaling them, and just finding that flow between our own sadness, our own anger, and everything, and that of the world. And if we just take a step back and take a deep breath, then maybe we can keep on moving. We can keep on flowing. And and at the times where, you feel like things are at the end of the world, take another breath and see where it takes you.
Thank you for listening. If today's conversation resonated with you and you're ready to explore your own healing journey or intuitive gifts, I'd love to work with you. I offer psychic medium readings, energy healing sessions, and intuitive development guidance at shariroberts.org. And if you're not quite ready for a session, but want to be a part of the conversation in a supportive community, join my private Facebook group. The link is in the show notes. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. This is Shari Leigh Roberts. Until next time, remember, you're never alone.